Hello, I'm professional speaker and business author Scott Steinberg, and one of the topics we touch on a lot in many of our speeches is strategic innovation. A lot of people wondering, how do we deal with change management? Everything seems to be in flux. The world is constantly changing around us. Markets, best processes, competitors, products. How do we keep up with it, stay ahead of the curve? And it's funny, you don't have to be Miss Cleo to actually predict the future. Although I do like Miss Cleo, she's pretty entertaining. But what I would get at on the flip side is that essentially, anybody can see the future coming down the tracks. The trick is having the good sense to be flexible enough to step aside so you don't get run over, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, strategic innovation begins with a culture of participation. You need to open yourself up to the possibility of change. Everything is moving around us. And oftentimes what happens to organizations or professionals is we want to focus on doing more of the same because we have fear, right? We're afraid of change. We're afraid of what the future brings. We're afraid that the move we make may not be the right one. But the answer is we constantly have to be moving forward. It's like football. At the end of the day, yards are going to be gained. Yards are going to be lost, you're going to get mauled, you're going to have to pick yourself back up, but you got to stay flexible enough to take those blows, shuck and jive, give it a stiff arm, keep moving the ball downfield in the aggregate. That's what matters. So decision makers have to make decisions. You're not always going to have perfect information, and even when you think that you're armed with all the tools, all the information, even the greatest, most successful people in the world never know for sure quite what they're doing or how something's going to come out. Military theorist Karl von Clausewitz, he actually posited that no good plan survives first contact with the enemy, which means that the second you hit the battlefield, the second you try and employ that strategy, every variable can change. So you have to be proactive about it. You have to experiment, you have to prototype, you have to iterate, you have to try new approaches, pick up new skills, be cultivating new talents, bringing in new people, getting diverse perspectives, backgrounds, approaches, encouraging a culture of participation, and creating incubators inside the organization, not siloed off in any specific department or division, because everybody needs to be able to communicate. So open channels of communication, flatline the organizations, that basically everybody can chat with one another, share ideas, and keep up with emerging trends. And then once you've figured out what's coming down the pike, then you can create, you can prototype with new strategies, new products, new processes that may be able to address them. And if you're not succeeding, it's probably because you're not failing enough. So as long as we make smart, strategic, measured, cost-effective failures, and we have an end goal in mind, that's how innovation is born, right? It's not like Apple goes out and decides that the iPod is going to be made one day and suddenly it springs forth full-grown in the first iteration. Like a computer programmer, you have to practice, put in your code, compile it, see what happens if the program doesn't run or doesn't run like you thought it would. There's some bugs, some glitches, things don't turn out. Learn from the experience. Failure is how we learn. So give yourself permission to try. Encourage people to speak up, not keep their head down. See what happens. Realize that perfection isn't necessarily such, because the closer we get, the more we produce diminishing returns. So at the end of the day, ship something, iterate, see what happens, have backup plans, constantly be trying new approaches, and as long as you're changing, growing, and leave yourself enough headroom to react based on how trends develop, then you'll be able to stay ahead of the curve.